we've been shut down for 3 months or so. And so we were told that a quarter capacity, which we have plenty of room to do. So we're glad that you're here, and of course there are a number of people who are going to, stay at home until they find out exactly how all this is going to pan out. A lot scaring them. But now we're allowed to at least open. What we're going to do is we're going to open just for Sunday morning service for now, and we're going to have a meeting afterwards to discuss what we want to do. You'll notice in the bulletin that it's a different word, right, of service. Several of the things, we won't be passing the plate. You notice we have the golden plate back there next to the doors. When we meet later on, the two first events coming up after this, we're going to talk about is communion, right? Have each wafer in an individual pill baggie, and I already have it at the seats. I mean, we've got to discuss these. And the other order is the big event that kicks off the fall season is the missions. So we've got to discuss what we want to do with the mission conference, right? How we want to handle that. And so just take a note of those things that are coming up, and we surely do not want to misstep, but we'll do the best we can. There's a lot more we don't know than we do know, right? And by the way, coronavirus and all the pathogens don't care about your politics. They don't care, Now here's something we're going to do. Obviously, we missed the collecting of the change for the Crisis Pregnancy Center. So we're going to do that in July. If you kept your change and collected your change, and so just bring your bottles in, put them on the back table, and we will collect them because their expenses still go on, right? Even though we missed the whole Mother's Day, Father's Day thing. We decided not to do the Father's Day handout. They don't like you to, everybody gather around the place and touch you, and besides that, the mothers would protest and all that stuff. And so anyway, we're not going to do that. Glimpses is in the bulletin, Church Around the World's in the bulletin. This is the first bulletin we've printed in 3 months. We're still going to do the Wednesday night WebEx studies, and we've been getting 8 to 12, including some people out of the area tuned into our Wednesday night studies. We've been going to virtues. We've been going through worship and praise is Wednesday nights. And we will make sure we'll stay within 45 minutes or so to make sure. So we'll try to truncate the praise and prayer time so we can get to study time in. Okay? And if you don't have the link for that, just send me an email or Debbie an email, and we'll send you the link to join the Bible study on Wednesdays if you'd like. Our update for missions update is from Dave Mason, Military Evangelism, and there's their emblem, and I think we uploaded their newsletter on the Facebook site. But the center was able to reopen their Friday night Bible studies for the results for the recruits the last 2 weeks in May. They took temperatures. They ate pizza. They watched a movie. The troops are grateful for reconnecting with the center and their friends. The new edition is not yet furnished, but it is finished. But the first sofa arrived the first week in June. So they begin. Now you can go on their website and see the connection. They had to spend, I think it was an extra $19,000 because the one house was 3 foot down from the way to land, so the other, so they actually had to do all this handicap stuff instead of being able to just connect it straight in, and so that added a lot to the cost. They had 16 days of rain that stopped the pouring of the new entrance pad to enter the new front door, but the electrical work and the electrical inspection are done. The pad was scheduled to be poured this past week, so we will see. They had a lot of rain. Pablo, one of the troops, returned from a 6-month deployment to Norway, which lasted several weeks longer due to, of course, the COVID-19 restrictions. Chapel service on base have restarted, so Dave was able to attend and invite a few Marines to dinner and Bible study. 2 weeks before the shutdown, they had started a lunchtime Bible study and are hoping to restart the study soon. So that has started, then they shut everything down. Throughout the shutdown, they have maintained their counseling ministry to the troops as much as possible, whether personal or situational, marriage issues, these issues have been able to do that. Dave is concerned with the Supreme Court ruling that the First Amendment can be ignored in the face of medical emergencies. That's huge. Because you can always add more exemptions to that. And so he's really concerned about that. And he's concerned about the lawless destruction of our cities, and I think all of us are, right? So that's really been pretty bad. Now I mentioned that our offering plates in the back, we're not going to be passing the plates. We're going to, again, decide what to do with the communion when it comes up. But I'm going to call Joe Whitaker.
1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18 through 31. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs, and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. And because of him, you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that as it is written, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. Let's pray. Lord God, we come before you this morning. We're so grateful to be together again. We ask that you would use this time as we gather together to glorify your name. Please receive worthy worship from us, Lord. Help us to not take this time together for granted. Lord, we ask that you glorify in Jesus' name. Amen.
Today's Father's Day, so we have a Father's Day message. And so I'm picking out a father who was not much talked about in Scripture, but you actually find him sprinkled throughout the Old Testament and actually represented a very godly man. The man is Barzillai, not one of your major figures of the Scriptures, but you know he is a man that we need to take note of. 2 Samuel 17, if you'd like to follow in the Scriptures. You know, wealth can be used. Wealth in itself is not evil. It can be used for good or bad, right? Wealth is, in itself, is not evil. For example, George Soros is doing some very, very wicked things with his wealth. A lot of these protesters and Antifa types are financed by George Soros. making his billions and actually doing an incredible amount of damage with them. But someone like David Green and Holly Lobby, he's used his for Christian Works, right? He's the one, his family's the one that built the Bible Museum downtown, which by the way is reopening this week, so see how that works. And so he's used, but I want to compare, we're going to compare this later on in the sermon. The wealth of Soros is far greater than the wealth of Hobby Lobby. Is far greater than the wealth of Chick-fil-A, who's very successful. And so we're going to talk about that because God hasn't chosen, as you read, right, many who are mighty, and many are rich, and many are powerful. But Barzillai is one of these very wealthy men that we've come across in Scripture. And so we pick it up here at in 2 Samuel 17, starting in verse 27. It says, "Now it happened when David had come to Mahanaim, that Shobi, the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the people of Ammon, and Machor, the son of Ammiel, from Lo Debar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite, from Rogelim, brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat and barley and flour and parched grain and beans and lentils and parched seeds and honey and curds and sheep and sheaves of the herd for David and the people who were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness." Now Barzillai is not one of these people you normally think about as Old Testament heroes, right? I mean, you think of your Daniels and your Josephs and Isaiahs and Ezekiels and these type of people. But he pops into the narrative here in a very positive way. Now, let me give you a little background on Barzillai. He's a very wealthy man, and we're going to see that as we go through here. And he uses wealth for the Lord. He is the father of Adriel. And I'm actually writing a book on this episode right now, a small book. Who's Adriel? All right, let me tell you who Adriel was. David comes and slays Goliath. Now, what was the prize he was supposed to get to slay Goliath? His daughter, right? His oldest daughter. He can marry his oldest daughter is Princess Mara. He goes and says, "Here's my princess." Well, David says, "I can't marry her. I don't have the bride price." By the way, this for later on, the bride price is going to be foreskin to the Philistines, right? The second time, he said, "Well, I want you to marry my daughter Mara," because this is when he comes back and he hears, Saul's killed his thousands, but what? David's killed his tens of thousands. Says, "Okay, I'm going to use my daughter to keep him and reign in my household." And so he comes and the second time he withdraws. And finally, Saul turns and gives Adriel Mara. Twice, Mara was supposed to be given to David. Later on, David's going to marry Michal, the younger sister. And there's some dynamics there. If you've been following the Sunday night messages, I've been talking about that on YouTube. So what happens with Mara and Adriel, they become fairly successful. They have 4 sons. Well, later on in the narrative, over in 2 Samuel, David's on the throne at that point, 2 Samuel 21. And he's on the throne, and there's a drought. There's a 3-year drought. And so David goes to the high priest to inquire of the Lord, why is this drought? Well, Saul had killed Gibeonites. The Gibeonites were the ones that made the agreement with Joshua, if you remember that. And so, and it says, well, what do you
David comes and says, what do you want so that this drought can be lifted? And they said, we want you to turn over 7 descendants of Saul that we might execute them. He goes to Merib and takes all 4 of her sons. 2 sons from a concubine, 2 from elsewhere, but all 4. I don't know if that's revenge or what, but all 4, and gives it over, and they are slain. And that's, we find Merib, that's the last time we hear of her in Scripture. What a tragic story. But Adriel was, now listen, this is a side trip, okay? By this time, Barzillai is dead. He was 80 when he helps David. But his 4 what kind of Thanksgiving is this? His 4 grandsons were killed by the very man that he helped his greatest time of need. So I find this a very dynamic, tragic story in the Scriptures, and that's why I think that her story should be told, that people should know more about this, because there is certain unfairness in life, right, that we have to deal with. So that's Merib was married to Adriel, his oldest son. 1 Samuel 18 tells the story there. So Barzillai was a prominent family in Israel. Now he's called a Gileadite. A Gileadite was anyone that was part of the tribes over in the Transjordan area. Remember when the Israel came through the land, that Gad and Reuben and half Manasseh said, we like this land over here. Give us this land over here. You guys can take that land over there. We'll get this land. And so they were given that land. From that point on, they were all just lumped together. It's called Gileadites, all of them, the Gads and the Reubens and the half of Manasseh, because that was the section, Gilead, that was the mountainous area to the northeast of Israel. Gilead might be familiar to you. That's where Jacob was running away from Esau, and he slips and he wrestles with the angels. That's where he's coming back through, being chased by Laban, coming back into the land. This is the area of Gilead. And we did not go across there, but we saw it, right? When we looked across a very rugged territory in that area of the world. And so, and you probably are familiar with, there is a bomb in Gilead, Never quite sure exactly how the story connects, but anyway, but that's, there's a bomb in Gilead. So Barzillai is from Gilead. And so, by the way, this is also the area of the world that Jephthah was from. Remember the story of Jephthah? He helps overcome the Ammonites. This is the same story. That story is told in Judges chapter 11. Now, Barzillai had aided David. Remember what happened? David had committed adultery. He had killed Uriah, had Uriah killed. And so the Lord says the sword is not going to pass from your family. And what happens is the fact that you have now Amnon raping his half-sister Tamar, then Absalom having Amnon killed, then Absalom running away, and then Joab convinces David to bring Absalom back, and so Absalom brought back, but he can't stand before the king, so Absalom gathers people and rebels against David. By the way, this is kind of a short summary here. And so, and David is running for his life, and this is where Barzillai comes into the picture. The men had to get out of there fast. They did not have food. They didn't have provisions. Barzillai comes and meets that need. That's why he's in the Scriptures here, why Barzillai is in the Scriptures. Now, after he comforts David and he gives him this food, and he gives them those things he need, bedpans, milk, cheese. He's bringing all this stuff. He's using all this parched grain. He's coming through here. After he does that, then, David says, I want you to come, Barzillai, and sit at my table. And so Barzillai said, well, I'm 80 years old. let me die in my own land. But if you want to do something to my son. Now, son number 2 comes into the picture. Adriel is son number 1, right? And Chinham is son number 2. So Chinham goes at his table. Now, how does Chinham come into the story? Well, Chinham comes into the story is the fact that David wants to do something for Barzillai's household, so he gives Chinham the inn in Bethlehem. The same inn that you see Mary and Joseph come to later on. All tied to Barzillai. Isn't this cool? Everybody shake. Okay, it's cool. Okay. And so this is how all this history comes together. Now David, one of his last things he did on his deathbed, and in 1 Samuel chapter 2, after he says, I want you to kill Joab and kill Shinham and kill, after he goes through all this, what a deathbed will, right? And so he said, but I want you to take care of Barzillai's descendants, which I find very interesting since David had turned over 4 of Barzillai's descendants to be killed by the Gibeonites. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic we have in the scriptures. Now, but we're not done. Wait, there's more. We're not done yet. Barzillai's word comes in, name comes into the picture in Ezra chapter 2 and Nehemiah chapter 7. Apparently, one of his daughters married a very important high priest. And so his line goes through the priestly line too, because of one of his daughters. So we learned about 3 of Barzillai's children. We learned about Adriel, who married Princess Merab. We learn about, are you following all this, by the way? We learn about Chinham, who receives the inn of Bethlehem. And then we have this daughter who marries a very important high priest. And we find it mentioned in the book of Ezra and in the book of Nehemiah. So Barzillai is a very prominent man. He's wealthy. David could not pay the dowry for Merab, so his son Adriel, marries, is given to Adriel, which I find interesting too in this account. Here, Barzillai was in favor with Saul, and later on, Barzillai helps David. So it's kind of interesting. So what Barzillai is doing is seeing who the Lord's anointed is, and he's going to help the Lord's anointed, whoever that is. And so then later on, of course, you have the dynamic with Michal, who is the youngest sister, marries David, so all that history is played in here. Later, Barzillai brings food to the men. He brings parched grains. He brings flocks. This is pretty costly, right? For a whole army that's running away from Jerusalem. He provisions them all. He brings bedding. He brings pans. He brings pots. He brings everything. He was a moving Walmart. I mean, he's just bringing everything to these guys so that they might be strengthened, so they might be provision. Now, by the way, Barzillai could have stayed out of the whole thing, right? I mean, where is he? He's across the Jordan. He's in Gilead. He could have stayed out of the whole thing, but he decided, these are God's men, these are God's servants I am going to provide for. And he provides the whole ball of wax. He was very wealthy and very influential. And by the way, being wealthy doesn't necessarily mean being prideful and self-indulgent. But most people are. They're wealthy. Here you have a very wealthy man who does right with his wealth. He does those things that God leads him to do. And so one of the key elements of a godly man is when you have the power to do right or wrong, you do right. Remember, you always have the power to do one of 3 things, right, wrong, or nothing. But he decides to go out of his way to meet this need. And so we see Barzillai, who's not self-absorbed, he goes out of his way. Now, most men of wealth are very self-absorbed, very self-important. Most of them are not believers. Just think of the greatest most powerful, wealthiest men in the world. None of them are Christians, right? You know, the wealthiest man in the world is Bezos. He's not a believer. You know, owns Amazon, owns the Washington Post, owns a lot of things. Not believers. You know, have you ever thought, man, if Bill Gates came to know the Lord, you know what he did? The Lord quite often doesn't do that, right? Not many mighty, not many noble, not many wealthy. Steve Jobs, when he was alive, very wealthy, not a believer. Bloomberg, here's a piece of work for you. Worth $50 billion, but he uses his wealth not to do good, but to do evil. Not a believer. Oprah, you know, not using her wealth to promote Christ. And so these are typical of those people who are wealthy. And they need, you know, the wealthy need to take a look at Luke 12:48. To whom much is given, much is required. This very night your soul is going to be required of thee. Then whose will your wealth be? Right? But Barzillai decided to take what God had given him and be able to promote good with it. Now, there's a few prominent believers in scriptures that did well being fairly wealthy. Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea said, listen, here's my tomb carved out for me. He turns it over to put Jesus in, and turned out to be one of the most important historical sites, you know, in the history of the world. It's where Jesus was raised from the dead. Barnabas is going to, you know, the believer. He sells the property in Cyprus, gives it all away, gives it all away to the apostles to use for the ministry. Then, of course, you had the Ananias and Sapphira thing where they tried to get accolades for what they did. It didn't work out too well, but that's another sermon. Gaius, who's Gaius? Okay, let's talk about Gaius. 3 John. Gaius is trying to help missionaries, traveling missionaries come along. Diotrephes, who loves the preeminence, is trying to stop him. And so John the Apostle is commending Gaius, and he is disparaging and criticizing Diotrephes, who loves the preeminence. And so Gaius is trying to do good with what the Lord has given him. Now, wealth and influence are given for one purpose, and one purpose only, is to serve the Lord with. What the Lord gives you, he expects us to use for him, right? You know, and so that is there's several. In the discipleship book, I go through the 6 reasons the Lord gives us wealth, and give unto the Lord, right? We have that throughout scriptures. To provide for your family, to give to those who have a need, to save for future needs. A godly man gives a heritage to her sons and his sons' sons, to pay your taxes, and of course to be a stewardship, you know, as the Lord leads you to be. And so there's 6 various ways that the Lord wants you to use the money. Now, you can use it for discretionary spending, right? But all those others have to be taken care of. And so here Barzillai was very, very good at doing this. And by the way, now this is something important as well. The Lord only expects you to give back as the measure he's given to you. So in Matthew 25, where he has the guy with the 5 talents, he didn't expect the guy with the 2 talents to do as much as the guy with the 5 talents. But he would have been disappointed if the guy with 5 talents didn't come up to his 5 talents, and he would have been very, very disappointed if the guy with 2 talents didn't come up with his 2 talents. And he was very disappointed with the guy with 1 talent who didn't do anything. And so he gives two different levels to each of us. One, he gives the amount, and two, he gives a specific gifting, right? Each one has a different calling, a different gifting. And so Barzillai obviously was blessed very much in the area of finances and administration. He's given that. Now just think, probably Solomon is probably the richest man in history. Probably was. Just read what he had. And then put that in a modern context. He squandered it. You know, he gained for himself wives and palaces, and when Gina and I were at Megiddo, it was a site where he had 9,000 horses. And a lot of people ministered, you know, in that area. He had dug a cistern that was 110 feet across and 110 feet deep just to contain water just for the horses. And where's Megiddo? Yeah, exactly. The mountain of Megiddo, Armageddon. You know, we're looking down over the valley of Jezreel. And so he spent it all on himself. And it ended up being vanity, right? It ended up being in vain. And yet you go in the New Testament, you got a gal named Tabitha, who everything she had, she turned it over to making things for the poor. She made blankets for the poor, right? And she made garments for the poor. So much so that the whole town, when she dies, gathers together, they're weeping, they're crying. And Lord, why did you take her? You know, she means so much to us, has done so much good. And here you have in Acts chapter 9, Peter praying, and she is raised from the dead. By the way, I like the name Tabitha better than Dorcas. But anyway, she's also called Dorcas. It means gazelle. Tabitha arrives, and Tabitha comes back and is able to continue her work. And so Barzillai could have stayed out of the fight. He could have kept his wealth, but he decided he was going to refresh David. And by the way, one of the things, if you read the text, not only did he refresh him physically, but that was a great encouragement to David. Sometimes we think no one cares, right? Just doesn't. David says someone really cares out here. I mean, read the Psalms. David cried a lot, right? Oh, woe is me. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Well, here comes Barzillai to encourage him. And so Barzillai wanted to serve the servants of God. And whenever you help with missions, whenever you reach out, whenever you minister, you're serving the servants of God. Now, so let's summarize. What is a godly man? Well, he's charitable. He's concerned for others. There's 4 parts of generosity I want to talk about as we conclude. 1, knowing what resources you have and what your calling is. I think it's a valuable exercise to say, Lord, what have you given me that I can use? I mean, one of those sermons you hear quite often is Moses. Moses only had a staff in his hand. Boy, what God did with that staff, right? What do you have in your hand? Well, God takes care of the rest. And so, what do you have? Now, I'm going to tell you 3 things I want you to take to heart. Number 1, you're not only responsible for what you've been given, but you're responsible for your potential as well. There's some people reach a plateau and say, I'm satisfied here, I'm comfortable here. If the Lord has given you 5 talents worth of giftedness, don't be settling for 3, right? Don't be settling for 3. Because, well, I have what I need. That's not the point. The point is the fact when God's giving you something, it's not only to meet your needs, but to meet the needs of others. If He's giving you an expanded ability, use it to the maximum for the glory of God, right? Secondly, I want you to really consider the fact that that everything you are and everything you have belongs to Him. You know, to me, one of the most incredible passages in the Scriptures is Job 1. Job loses everything. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Wow. I've never met a person that I thought would have said that. Right? You know, if we had a whole room of 10,000 Christians and everybody was honest saying, hey, who would have said that? I don't think any hands would go up. And the third thing I want you to realize, and this is important in stewardship, we're appointed to it. In other words, we're appointed to meet needs. The Lord doesn't, it's not an accident when the Lord brings people in who have a need. He's saying, here's a need, I want you to meet this. You know, sometimes I've had, the Lord say, I want you to do this. I said, Lord, you know what type of person this is? He says, that's not the issue, is it? I want you to listen to this person. I want you to talk to this person. I want you to pray with this person. The schedule doesn't belong to you, it belongs to me. So Barzillai felt that he was appointed to meet this need. And he went out to do it. Secondly, not only did he know his resources and his calling, he recognized the needs to meet. He was alert. And one of the things we have to realize is we're going along life, we're going to run across things where we're going to look around to see if what the Lord has, and then we're in tune with what the Lord has for us. We'll be alert to the Spirit saying, I want you to meet this need. You know, Proverbs 3:27-28, it says, you know, do not forsake giving to those that have a need when it's right next to you, right? And so quite often you go along, and that's exactly what you have in the parable in Matthew 25, is the fact the goats who did not, you know, feed the hungry, did not give drink to the thirsty, did not clothe the naked, did not visit those in jail. It wasn't the fact they did not, that you did this on purpose. It was the fact that they didn't even notice, right? They didn't even, you know, they just sort of pretend like it wasn't there. And so Barzillai went out of his way to meet this need that David had. The third one is not only are you to know your resources and your calling and recognize the needs of meet, third one is actually meeting those needs. Being quick to meet the needs. Now, I'm not talking about just giving money to panhandlers to go along who could be working or looking for drug money, stuff like that. I mean, the Lord lays on your heart, right, what the needs are, right? And this person has a need. And then you need to go out of the way to meet that need. And then the fourth one, not only do you meet that need, but you seek to expand your influence and resources, not for your benefit, not for your glory, but that you might be able to honor the Lord and bless more people. And so these four areas, that you know your resources, that you recognize needs, that you meet the needs, and you expand your influence and resources for the glory of God. So Barzillai sought out the need, and he met it. And no one could meet, now no one can meet all needs, right? You're not called to meet everything. I mean, sometimes you get spun up and say, well, I can't meet everything. Well, you surely can meet some, right? Like the old story of the man who was picking up starfish, you know, throwing them back in the ocean. There were thousands of them. The guy said, what are you doing? You know, you can save a few of them, but what difference does that make once these thousands? He says it makes a difference to this one. And so, whatever needs that the Lord lays you to meet, even though in a vast sea of needs, it might seem very minor, you meeting that need's important. Now remember what Paul says, that the things they saw him do, to go ahead and teach others, that they might be able to teach others how to do the same thing. It multiplies out, it really does. It's the old throwing the rock in the stream, the ripples go out. And so Barzillai was alert to these needs that the Lord laid on his heart. And even though we can't meet every need, God calls us to meet some of the needs. Now, Paul's a great illustration. He was the apostle to who? The Gentiles, but not the apostle to the Jews. And so when he tried to go to Jerusalem, the Lord says, you're not to go to Jerusalem. It means that's not for you. The needs that you need to meet are the needs that he calls you to meet. Right? That's the issue. Now, this is important to understand as well. We're to help meet needs and missions, help meet needs around us, help needs in our family. But to do that, you got to deny yourself. Right? I mean, what is the key passage in the book of Ecclesiastes? Is Ecclesiastes 12:3. I denied myself what? Nothing. I was going to experiment. I'm going to deny myself nothing. Well, that didn't work out very well, did it? It's not that you deny yourself everything, but you use those things that you need to enhance yourself so that you might be able to serve better others. That's the whole idea. The fact is that it has to be a self-denial going on. And Barzillai did that. It cost him a lot of money to do this. So as Barzillai was alert to meet the needs which God laid upon his heart, so we must be led by the Spirit to do the same thing. So when you think of the Good Samaritan, right? You think of Barzillai, you think of Tabitha, you think of Barnabas. These people went out of their way to sacrifice those things that they possessed, realizing those things possessed didn't belong to them anyway, belonged to God to meet the needs that God told them to meet. And that's why we have in James 2 that this whole idea of loving charity and provision, which enhances the testimony. By the way, it sets you aside. I remember years ago, if I told him the name, Steve would know it. I'm not going to say it. A guy who was a very legalistic pastor, and he lost their building because, the more he preached, the more people left. Had a membership drive, drove it all the way down. But they had a funeral he had to do, and he didn't have a place to do it. And he told this guy, he wouldn't even consider us brothers. He told this guy, he says, go up to Camp Springs, they're gracious people. They'll do it. That's the testimony we have to have. They're gracious people there. And by the way, you guys have a great testimony community. You really do. I run across people all the time, see all this activity you're doing, and I'm glad, you bring us in when we do the Easter thing right and do the trunk or treat and all these things. We need to be known as gracious people serving the Lord, ministering to others, because that's what God's called us to do. That's why we're here. We're not here to build big houses or to make a name for ourselves. We're here, Lord, here am I, use me. That's why we're here. And Barzillai did that. He humbly did that, and he served the Lord, and he was used by God to do great things, and his name was sprinkled throughout the Old Testament. And I wanted to end with two things. Number one, he wasn't a pharisaical guy. Hey, look what I've done! He just did it. And David said, I'm going to honor you. He said, give your honors to someone else. The Lord's blessed me. The last thing I want to tell you is this, and I think this is tremendous. When Paul was sitting in prison, and he's called before the emperor, right, Caesar, he said, no one stood with me. He says, but Onesiphorus, bless their household. He came all the way from Ephesus, came to Rome, sought me out in prison, and met my needs. Bless the house of Onesiphorus, because he was alert and sensitive to a hurting servant of God. And his name is in the Word of God forever as one who meets needs. Let's pray. The gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for the time we've had together, and we thank you, Lord, for this tremendous narrative you put in the scriptures of Barzillai, a man of grace, a man of love, a man of charity. And Lord, we just pray, Lord, that you help us to be like Barzillai. I I pray, Lord, you bless the fathers, and may the wives and children honor your fathers this day, Lord, especially godly men seeking to serve you. Lord, as we come to a conclusion, we know it's not the exact fellowship that we want, it's not the exact things that we want to be involved in, but it's where we've started. We praise you that we are able to start back here, at least in this limited capacity. Lord, as we go from here, Lord, and as we meet afterwards, Lord, maybe just honor and please you in all things. Of course, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We do want to end with the gospel message, and just briefly, 3 points. As you can see here, for those who are listening who do not quite understand what it means to be a Christian, let me just give you 3 points. 1, Scripture say that all sin comes short of the glory of God, right? There's none righteous, no, not one. There's no one perfect. But God is what? He's perfect. Matter of fact, it says in Psalm 5 that evil cannot dwell with God. And so we're told that we're made in the image of God. We have an eternal soul. And a soul that cannot reach heaven is sent into the lake of fire, Revelation chapter 20. However, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And so the Lord has placed this bridge, that's Jesus Christ, across here. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. If you never put your faith in Jesus Christ, trust in him as your Lord and Savior, today would be a good day to do that. And if you have questions, just call the church and we'll try to help you the best way. We're going to close with a song before we meet up here, those who want to meet, and we'll discuss how to proceed forward. Joe?
Turn with me in your hymnals to number 100. Number 100, What a Friend We Have in Jesus. We're just going to sing this first verse together. Please stand. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Let's pray. Lord, we come before you this morning. We thank you for your goodness to us. Lord, we thank you again for the opportunity to be here together after so long. Help us to go out into the world, Lord, to remember that we're stewards of everything you've given to us, not just our money, but our time, our attention, our affections. Lord, help us to seek to serve you in all those things. Lord, we do thank you